MSTY with a nice move today. So let's look at that, and let's also talk a little bit about Mr. Hello my friends, this is Legend. So today we're going to take a look at the MSTY chart and see where it moved up today. It had a nice little run. And then we're also going to take a look at Mr. and also take a small peek at the class action against Mr. to see what that's all about. So let's just go ahead and slide right over to the Webull chart and get started. So here we are on the Webull chart, and we are looking at MSTY. And as you can see today, look at that nice little jump up today. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Had a nice pop. Look at that. We closed yesterday at $20.57 and then opened today at $20.89 before closing at $21.05. So a nice little pop up there overnight. Love that. And with the nice 2.3% move on the day, man, that is great. Love it, love it, love it. Now it looks like we might have a little bit of a resistance at about $21.42, as that's about where this top is right here. And we'll see if Mr. can keep on going and help MSTY break through that. Let's just go ahead and flip it over to the adjusted chart, and let's just check out the indicators before moving on to Mr. Okay, now we're on the adjusted chart here, and let's turn on the Bollinger Band. All right, there we go. So now you can see the candle here. We are on the upper side of that Bollinger Band. So for me, that's not my time to buy. I prefer that candle to be on that bottom side of that Bollinger Band, preferably toward the bottom of the Bollinger Band, but definitely on the bottom half, under the midpoint. And then I would be looking for that RSI2, which is this yellow line, to be down below 10 on that RSI2. But you can see on the MACD, we are still just flat. Not much movement on the momentum, but we did get a little bit of a green volume today. So that's always welcomed. Super excited to see it back above $21. I know you are too. So let's just go ahead and slide over to Mr. and let's see what it looks like on the charts. All right, here we are on Mr. You can see that green candle there. It is sitting right in the middle of that Bollinger Band. So it had a nice little pop from yesterday. And yesterday is when I did purchase those 2 shares at $3.60. So that seems to have worked out well for me on that move, as it did close yesterday at $367.18 before opening at $373.68. And then it closed for the day at $377.02. The RSI2 here is up, and that's because we have that green candle. But that MACD, it is still just flat. But again, super excited about this nice jump up right here from yesterday. Love to see it. Now, as far as in the move, Mr. actually moved 2.68% on the day. Now that in dollars would be $9.84. But a 2.68% move. And then MSTY, what did they move up? 2.33%. So a very nice move up and capturing a good portion of that move up on Mr. That's great. We do not expect MSTY to capture all of that move up, but that is a pretty good capture if you ask me. A 2.33 versus 2.68. Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll take that. Now, of course, I'm sure you've heard that Mr. does have a lawsuit against them. Now, I'm not well versed in any kind of lawsuits or anything like that, but we can pull that up and look at it together, and you can make your own decisions. And we'll also look at it on the chart just to see if we can make sense of it. But again, this is just my opinions, as I am not providing nor giving any kind of legal advice here. So on the Webull charts, you can look at the news for certain stocks or ETFs. And in this case, we're looking at MSTR. And I can click the little notepad right here, and that will pull up any kind of news on MSTR. And as you can see, this one right here, and this is all available online. I am not showing anything other than what is already available for each and every person to read on their own. And if you want to learn more about it, I suggest that you research that, as I will only go through what they are stating in this little write-up. So it starts off right here with the investors who purchased the company's securities between April the 30th of 2024 and April the 4th, 2025, inclusive, are encouraged to contact the firm before July 15th if you're a shareholder who has suffered a loss. So this is each and every person's rights to contact and go forward or not with this. I am not stating one way or the other, whether it's right, whether it's wrong. This is only showing what is actually available at each and every person's fingertips here. And it seems here that according to the complaint, the company made false and misleading statements to the market. The potential profitability of strategies Bitcoin-centric approach was overstated. The risks faced by the company related to the Bitcoin's volatility and changes related to the Financial Accounting Standards Board were understated to investors. Based on these facts, the company's public statements were false and materially misleading throughout the class period. When the market learned the truth about strategy, investors suffered damages. So that seems to be the write-up of this lawsuit here, stating that between these dates, there was a loss or potential loss, I guess, and the fact that it did not fully make the investors aware of that potential loss and of the volatility. Therefore, I guess that is what this class action here is for. And that if you've suffered any type of loss, then you can, of course, look deeper into this. Now, for myself, this is not for me. And plus, I was not even a shareholder during this time. But let's just look at the chart and let's just see what we can see with those dates from that April 30th, 2024 to April 4th of 2025. Okay, so we're back on the charts here. We're just going to try to window in that area and just see if we can understand. Again, this is just talking, as I am not fully aware of everything that is going on with that. So I'm not speaking to that, but just looking at the dates, and then you can make your own conclusions and thoughts on what you feel this is all about. So we're going to zoom out here. All right, we're zoomed out, but now what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to flip it back from adjusted. I'm going to flip it back to the actual, so we can get the actual candle moves, which would be the actual price moves, right? Instead of the momentum move. So we'll just flip this chart right on back to actual. Boom. And here we go. Okay, so we are on the actual chart now, and I've also went ahead and windowed in that time frame that they're calling out. And that time frame was April the 30th of 2024, as that is right there, April the 30th of 2024. And we'll slide right all the way over to the end of the box right here. And that is April the 4th of 2025. And that is the time frame that this is dealing with. Now, first glance at it, you'll see that the stock price here was in the ranges of about $1,000 per share to about as high as $1,800 per share. So a very big range here through here, right? Because there was a lot of volatility, right? So this stock was moving very heavily. So I've zoomed in so we can see a little bit better, and you can see this lower price of about $1,000, and that number is popping up right over here to the right side. So right there is about about $1,000 per share, and it got as high right there of about $1,800 per share. So like I said, that is a wide range. So if you did buy it up here and then it fell back down to about $1,200, then yes, you did take a loss, right? That's for sure. If you bought it and you sold it here. But even if you bought it here and then you sold it here, you would be up slightly. But again, it did drop again here. So there are plenty of areas where you could have bought and sold MSTR and taken a loss, right? Now, the other big thing to note is, as you can see, the candle's up through here, and then all of a sudden on August the 7th, that next day, boom, the price went from a close of $1,246 to an open price of $130. Whoa, what a fall, right? Wait a minute, something don't look right. Notice there's a little S down here, right? That S is standing for split, okay? So what happened there is they announced a 10-for-1 split, meaning for every 1 share you have, you will get 10 shares, okay? So if you had 1 share, that next day when this opened, you had 10 shares. And the same sense goes if you had 100 shares at this price, when it opened on this day, you had 1,000 shares. So whatever you had, that number of shares was multiplied by 10, okay? Because you earned and you received 10 shares for every 1 share you had. But now, you don't just get your shares increased and keep that same dollar amount, because then everybody would have 10x their money, and I guarantee you that everybody would have sold that exact same day, because you just 10x'd your money, and why would you not go ahead and lock in those profits, right? I think everybody would have, and Mr. would have just closed up. But anyway, so what happens on a split is, yes, the number of shares did multiply times 10. But to keep everything still in a line, the price of the stock itself divided the price by 10. So you multiply the shares times 10, but then you divide the price by 10. So what does that do? Well, that just basically cancels the two out. So therefore, the amount of money that you had invested and that it was worth, if there was no movement in the price of the stock, after hours or anything like that, then the amount of money you would have would be the exact same, right? If you had $1,000 in it while it was up here, when it opened down here, you still had $1,000. The only difference is up here, you might have had 1 share, and down here, you now have 10 shares, right? So that's what happens on a stock split, and that's what happened here. On August the 8th of 2024, a 10-for-1 split. So that's why you see this huge drop down in that chart right here. And your first glance at it, you just see, oh my gosh, it just fell off the cliff, right? But that's what happened. It did a stock split. So then it opened on that day at $130.23. And this is all still within this realm of the dates that they're calling out. Now, did it stay above the 130.28? Well, let's just zoom in a little bit better on these candles at the bottom, because they're really small compared to the movements above it. All right, there we go. So if we opened right here at that 130.23, it looks like there was a low of a 113.69. So again, could have lost money right there as well. But had you held on, definitely not have lost money. Because for every dollar it goes up at this point, you get 10 times the move, right? Because now you have 10 shares for every 1 share you had before. And I know and imagine that some of you owned Mr. during this time where you got that stock split. But now we're coming up to the end of that period that they're calling out, and it looks like on April 4th, it did close at $293.61. So what is that compared to the original price at the very beginning? Well, if it was a 10-for-1 split, we can just simply take that closing price of $293, take it times 10, right? Take it times 10. So 293 now becomes 2,930. And does that make sense? Well, let's just punch that in. Sometimes it's easier to see the numbers themselves. And what I'm looking at is I am looking at on this day right here. That's the end, right? And I'm looking at that closing price of $293.61. So we can take that 293.61 times 10. Why am I taking it times 10? Because I am trying to get what that price would have been if it did not split, right? So I can compare apples to apples from the beginning of this period to the end of this period. So I take that, and now I got 2,936, right? And what was that price when it first opened on that day for the period that they're calling out? And what was that price at opening for that day? Well, it was around, and I'm just putting my cursor here at the bottom here, and it was around that 1,065 per share. So if I'm looking at this correctly, from the start period to the end period of that range of dates, we are going from $1,065 to the ending price relative without that split to $2,936. So it looks like if you would have bought on that date and you still owned it or you sold it at the end of that time period, then you would be up on the play, right? That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that you would be up on the play from that $1,060 some dollars to $2,900, right? I mean, if we use round numbers, that's $1,000 and $2,900 at the end. So looks like you would be up. Now, could you have lost money throughout? Well, sure. There's a lot of times you could have lost money. And it always depends on when you buy it and when you sell it, right? Because if you bought it here at this $1,700 per share area right here, and then you sold it right here at $1,200, well, that's a loss. So yes, you did take a loss. But like everything, it just all depends on when you bought in and when you got out to determine, did you win or did you lose? And every single person will be different, as no one gets in at the exact same moment and out at that exact same moment. So your gains and losses will be different. And for those who did lose on it, it is tough to lose the money, that's for sure. It is tough. But in my opinion, anytime you buy a stock, anytime you buy an ETF, or anytime you're buying a YieldMax high yield ETF, you always take the risk, as no one knows the future. You are not guaranteed gains. You are not guaranteed a loss. You're not guaranteed anything, right? So anytime that you're buying and selling or trading in the stock market, whether it's an ETF, a stock, or anything, always make sure that you are taking into account your losses, as nothing is guaranteed. And this goes for MSTY as well, right? And that is the main reason why on MSTY I am looking to gain my initial capital back. My main reason is because if I can gain my initial capital back on MSTY, then I can use those distributions from that point out and then build MSTY without using my personal capital. Now, that will lag my timing on growing MSTY, but I'm okay with that, as I would prefer to get my original capital out and then build MSTY. But that's just how I'm playing it, and everybody plays it differently. Just always make sure that you assess the risks and you're fully aware of any gains and losses that you could take. So like I said, I am not saying one way or the other on that lawsuit that is being shown in the news feeds as being good, bad, or anything. I am only just showing it and then showing it on the chart, and then you can make your own assessment of the situation and decide on whether or not that is for you. But like I said, it is definitely not for me, as I see upside for Mr. and I am bullish Bitcoin. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, it'd be much appreciated. And as always, I am not a financial advisor, nor am I a lawyer. So please do your own due diligence before you get into any stock plays. And until next time, legend out.